Welcome to Real Martial Law, a weekly program focusing on real estate and the laws that govern the real estate industry along the Grand Strand, the PD, and South Carolina. And now, here's Marshall Biddle and Jack Murphy with Real Martial Law.
Yep, it's that time again. Any and all questions regarding real estate and the law may or may not be answered here in the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, but some will be. Welcome
That's right.
to Real Martial Law. I am not Marshall Biddle. I'm Jack Murphy.
Yes, sir.
You're Marshall Biddle.
I am. All day long and twice on Sunday.
Tell me about some real martial law. How was your week?
Good. You know, glad it's spring. We've
Are you
sprung
now?
into spring, so I still hate the time change, but that is what it is. You know, not so much about the one in the fall where you get the extra hour. That always is a good thing, but the spring one just wreaks havoc on me for sure.
Does it?
Yes.
How are your allergies?
I take something every single day, even when it's not spring, so I pretty much try to stay ahead of it. Benjamin's been getting hit with them hard, but, you know, I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So,
Pollen has been brutal this year.
yes, it has.
Everywhere I look along the Grand Strand, I see green, and I'm not in real estate.
Right? Not yet. Not yet, mind you. Shh. I know, right? Secret.
Yeah, that's all we need is one more real estate agent here along the Strand.
Well, you know, they're going to come and go, and we've got this thing going on right now. I mean, the big news out there is this whole National Association of Realtors class action lawsuit.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
There's a couple of those, but they got this one settled, apparently, and so there's lots of information out there, and people are jumping up and down and trying to figure out whether, you know, what's it going to do to their market or to their ability, and, you know, everybody's speculating, every expert or quasi-expert.
There are a lot of quasi-experts.
Yeah, right. They're only as good as the paper they're written on.
And what they're reading many times, they're forming an opinion on something that I wouldn't trust.
Right. Well, and they base it on, you know, I talked to my neighbors, and my neighbors, you know, said this, and
Yeah,
quite
my
frankly,
neighbor's first cousin's in real estate, and so
or your brother's, sister's, father's, mother's hairdresser's cousin. That's a good one. So, but I walked in with 8 or 10 articles, and they're all over the board. I don't think anybody knows what it's really going to do to the local real estate market or the state real estate market or the national or regional real estate areas.
sure. Well, if you've been living under a rock and you have no idea what we're talking about, feel like you've walked in on a conversation, it's basically where a group of home buyers in
Home sellers in Missouri. Yep.
thought that the commission structure on both sides might have been unfair. Conspiracy was a
That's
word that I
correct.
heard
Yes.
in one of those stories you
Yes,
were reading.
colluding and conspiracy, that somehow it was price fixing on behalf of the brokers to determine what the seller's agent and the buyer's agent were going to share, and somehow they fixed the prices.
Does anyone ever reverse engineer a situation like what got us to this point? And I think it was just the simplicity of it. Okay, this is it. You pay this, and the other gets taken care of on the other side. I mean, the marketplace dictated that position. I don't think it was a conspiracy. I could be wrong, but it just seems to cut through the clutter.
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least. There's a lot of folks out there that don't understand how it works, don't know what the history is, why there are certain things. I mean, to me, I've been a licensed agent since 1988, and the number one rule is that the commission is negotiable 100% of the time. Now, as an agent, not as a broker, you know, my commission structure that I expressed to the sellers when you're listing property was based on policy set by my broker in charge. When you advertise property for sale for somebody, whether it's on the internet or the MLS or whatever, you do it under the authority of your broker in charge. You don't designate, I'm the person listing this property. You can say you're the listing agent, but it's the brokerage. You always have to refer to the brokerage, and that's where the protection comes from for, and so I guess it just seems very strange to get to a point where they're acting like, okay, this is going to decrease home prices. This is going to save the buyers, save the sellers money because they're not having to pay what they pay in a commission. And then somehow they have been price fixing for generations. I mean, this is hundreds of years of precedent that they've done and not done for setting commissions and not somehow colluding and price fixing with other realtors. It just is very, very unusual.
So you're a broker, and you've got agents that are primarily representing sellers. You've got some that are primarily representing buyers. So you're able to set a commission for both buyers and sellers under one brokerage.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see how this here impacts anything. And then whoever you agree to do business with, I mean, aren't alliances formed that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think they currently are, and I think they will continue to be in the future. I mean, it doesn't make sense for all of this to kind of be, this earth-shattering discovery of this is going to, it's almost like somebody said, well, okay, this is going to be the result. They have no idea. You don't know whether the buyers are going to have to come out of pocket and pay their buyer's agent, and the seller's only going to be responsible for paying his listing agent, and there's not going to be any cut or difference between. They could do it exactly the way it's going now. You could have an agreement with the buyer's agent, say, hey, we're going to charge 6%. If you want to, broker with us, we'll pay you 0.5 or 3%. It's not going to be on the MLS and it's not going to be listed, but we could have an agreement. You do business with me, it's exactly the same. Nothing would change. At the end of the day, you say, well, the seller pays the commission. Well, maybe they do. It comes off of their category on the settlement statement, but for the person buying the house, using the money that they pay for the house and then giving it to the seller, then the seller pays the commission. There was no commission, then, the buyer would pay the commission and they buy the house without a commission attached to it. Then who paid the commission? It's all the same money, So it's very convoluted, and I'm not really sure how that argument became the law of that federal court, if you will. And if they're not going to appeal it, then it basically is going to become the law of the land unless some other cases that are pending out there aren't resolved as well.
So the initial claim was well into the billions, wasn't it?
$1.8 billion. Wow. And then it said there was a settlement. Instead of appealing, they agreed to settle it for $418 million, which is probably 25% of that, a little more than 25%. It just, sometimes you strike a deal because you know how it's going to come down. I mean, the court basically slapped them on the hand and gave them a really big number, or at least the jury did. And again, you don't really know from the trial standpoint, did the judge let some stuff in, prevent some stuff from coming in? What was it that the jury heard? Mm-hmm. So you never really know, what caused that number to be that number.
Sure. And then it's paid over a 4-year period.
That's right. The next 4 years. That's correct. Yep.
Well, where does that money come from? I mean, does it come from realtors, agents?
Well, I think it's going to, if it's coming from the NAR, it's going to come from, everybody pays a fee. If you're a member of the National Association of Realtors, you pay a fee every year. Mm-hmm. So, they have their revenues pretty extensive. Mm-hmm. And so, this will be maybe the fees go up if you got, 2 million. I don't know how many realtors there are in the country, but if you add, for every dollar you add to the fee, that's a bunch of money.
Yeah, just based on how real estate has such a huge impact on business in America, I mean, you got to be a member of that.
Yes.
To protect your organization, because there's so many moving parts, not just at all the state levels, but that even breaks into counties or districts sometimes. And, there's a lot of moving parts to that.
Well, and the NRA was created in time to protect the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So for the fact that this case came out and held that they were somehow not protecting consumers is interesting. It's an interesting result because their ethics and their bylaws and their compliance issues and how you can and can't, what you can and can't do, and the disclosures and all of that. I mean, they really are cutting edge on all of that, and they've been doing that for hundreds of years.
Yeah, sure.
It just almost doesn't make sense.
It
I mean,
doesn't
it's the
make
1800s. They were founded, and I just, to me, it seems to be an anomaly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate public-private partnership because you've got state legislatures, in charge of appointing in some states, and governors have a say in it, and it's a whole odd. I never understood this from the beginning because I still don't see how it changes.
Yeah, I don't know whether it'll change or not. I think
at the end of the day, how somebody gets, I don't see it changing.
Yeah,
I
don't
commissions
either.
go up?
I guess they could. I mean, if a buyer's agent drives a harder bargain for representing somebody, because, and then the seller says, well, I don't want to pay the buyer's commission, and they're going to have to pay it. Maybe it does cost more money at the end of the day. But I originally don't think, I initially don't think it's going to be, I don't think much is going to change.
No.
I think it's going to be the same. You can do it. You just can't put it in the listing agreement. So I think you can still put it on your website. You still can communicate with buyer's agents and tell them that you'll still, split fees based on a 50-50 with whatever your, maybe 60-40. Who knows? Sometimes there's a buyer's, bonus for selling bonus or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to do, but I don't think it's going to change a lot.
So the price of houses not getting cheaper based on that. I mean, you saw some of those stories, and my question to you was, how? I mean, how does it make because it doesn't. You said a great line, not here when we were on the air. You said that the price of houses drive commissions. The price of commissions doesn't drive the price of a house.
That's correct.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That nails it.
And for the last maybe 5 years in the greater Horry County, Grand Strand, Horry, Georgetown, and Grand Strand area, it's been a seller's market where you get full price offers, you get multiple full price offers, and, at the end of the day, the seller doesn't care what it costs. They've been paying 6% in this area since I was in real estate in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that pretty much has become kind of the norm, but I don't know whether it's going to, some places, sometimes we would do 7%. If you could get a seller to agree to a 7% commission, more power to you.
Sure.
You split 3, you get 4 in-house and 3 on the outside. I don't know that anything's going to change.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And I think that maybe the experts that are out there think something's going to change. It's just like the weatherman. He is much better at what happened yesterday than he is about what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. When the story broke, the latter part of last week, it was like, oh, well, all you guys getting into real estate, get out. It's over with. And you just saw this mass exodus of everybody that'd been in real estate the last 2 years just hanging up their hat and going home.
Well, most people that are getting into the real estate business for the first time are novices. I get it. It's a market. We've had this conversation before on a lot of different shows that we've done. When the kindergarten teacher is getting her real estate license to make some extra money, it's over.
Yeah.
The market is over.
Yeah.
The kid that turned 18 and then scoops ice cream in the store, in the ice cream parlor, is now selling real estate. It's a sign that something's changing.
Yeah, there's something changing, all right. We got to pay some bills here.
Okay, let's do it.
Of course, you're the one paying the bill.
Well, that's how it works,
all
right?
Right. Quick time out. Listen carefully. It's important. Listen to the details. Real Martial Law continues in just a bit.
If you're buying or selling real estate and you need an attorney, contact Marshall Biddle at the Biddle Law Firm. Marshall's been involved in the purchase and sale of real estate for more than 30 years, and his family's been in the real estate development business for more than a century. In addition to being an attorney, Marshall is also a licensed real estate agent here in South Carolina. The Biddle Law Firm is located in historic downtown Conway and online at biddlelawfirm.net.
Giddy up! We're back with more of Real Martial Law.
Yeah! I just felt like I was on a stagecoach there for just a second. This whole Western theme you've got going with the music.
I hear you.
Yeah.
You know, it's I like the old westerns.
Be like, gee, Matthew. Yeah, from well, that sounded more like Mr. Haney.
Yes, it did, for sure.
Festus from Gunsmoke. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Festus from Gunsmoke.
Yeah,
That's
I
some
wonder
great
which,
shows.
Real estate agency handled.
The Cartwrights.
Yeah, the
Home.
the silver. Yeah, all that silver out there, and the Bonanza.
Probably Wells Fargo.
Could have been.
Yeah,
You
back
think?
in the
I
day.
thought they were just in the stagecoach business at that time.
Well, again, they came in the money business. You know, and if you weren't paying cash, you had to get it somewhere. So,
How times have changed.
yes. And of course, you know, in this market and everything that we're talking about, it's, you know, there's a lot of different factors that affect everything.
Well, in real estate, I bet inventory has something to do with
That
it.
has a lot to do with it. Interest rates, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of everything. And then if, you know, right now we're kind of still in the seller's market where there's low inventory. And if we get more inventory and interest rates go down, that might be a good thing. But I mean, right now what you're dealing with is people who are selling their houses. They probably have rates that are down at the 2 and 3% from back in the 09, 10, 11 when interest rates really kind of took a tanking.
Yeah.
You know, the prime rates were at 1/4 to 0.5%, and so interest rates were hardly anywhere. Now interest rates are 6 or 7%. So if you sell your home and you've got a 2.5, 3% interest rate, and you're buying something new, and you're going to have to get a mortgage, you're going to be looking at, you know, really twice the interest rate. So maybe you can't buy as much house as you could, but then again, you're getting more for the value of your home when you sell it. But you know, I mean, just like anything else, it's a supply and demand. Same thing with mortgages. Same thing with, you know, values, and you know, a lot of things have to happen at the same time to create a better market. And so, you know, I mean, there's hope that this will happen in the spring of 24. I mean, this is statistically the buying season, the spring. You know, people are beginning to finish up school, and maybe they're, you know, looking for, you know, the next home, move during the summer kind of stuff. And, you know, kids are out of school if you're moving or not moving. And, you know, but there's a lot of things that come into play when you deal with, you know, the market. And, you know, everybody's hopeful. We don't know what this NAR thing is going to do for the market. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. What is the election going to do? You know, what do the primaries do in the summer? I mean, we pretty much know it's going to be, unless something radical happens, it's going to be a repeat of the Biden versus Trump. And of course, depends on what news program you watch as to which side says they're winning that contest.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, and then you got all the litigation going on and with Trump, and that causes other issues, you know, just because a court in some, you know, northern district says Trump's a bad guy, you know, in the South, he might not be a bad guy.
It is odd. I mean, you know, at the crux of Trump's deal in New York was that he kind of just picked a number right out of the air and said, "This is what this is worth."
Right.
Well, where do you get a number when you put something like, for instance, someone's bond? I mean, or damages, or I mean, where do those numbers come from? What are those based on? Is there?
Well, I think he pulled it out of the sky. I mean, he wanted to shock the conscience, which is a legal term that courts look at, you know, but also, you know, this is a victimless crime. Matter of fact, nobody lost any money. Everybody that he allegedly, defrauded by inflating his values of his property, they got paid the money back. It's
Sure.
banks. They're not jumping up and down.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a banker, and it was all I could do not to laugh in his face when he explained why what Trump allegedly did or did not do was wrong. Was because that the money, the more favorable deals he got was money that could have gone to someone who was really looking for a loan, and that impacted how much could be lent from that institution, and that people that really at the low end of the spectrum weren't going to get loans because of people like Trump getting unfavorable loans at the top. And it was all I could do not to laugh at the guy. And he's in banking, explaining that point of view.
Well, you ought not to get your financial advice from a banker.
Well, I'm not that in particular one because it just
Well,
struck
for the
me
most
as-
part, they make what, $50,000-$60,000.
It struck me as odd. And
Yeah.
I know how money is lent at the bank,
Right.
Just based on fractional reserves and how much is in deposits and.
Yeah, but he might have been. I mean, I'll tell you. Some of these really big loans that you're talking about, millions and millions and millions of dollars. A lot of them aren't banks. They're insurance companies.
Okay.
Insurance companies have a ton of money.
Yep.
And they loan that money on really big commercial projects all the time. But you're talking about $100 million deal. Somebody's going to do that deal. Again, is he buying down what it's going to cost him in the interest rate based on the values and those kind of things? I mean, again, how do you value what your real estate is? You take a raw piece of land and I'm going to put $100 million in it. Is it worth more than $100 million? You certainly would hope so.
Sure.
Then you look at the cash flow projections, and if the cash flow's there, he gets the money, builds the project, does permanent financing, you get taken out, you made some really good interest. I mean, even if it's, let's say it's 5% on a $100 million loan, that's clicking away pretty good. So they made money. Again, did they make the money that they could have? I don't know, but they get a lot of money on a $100 million loan than they do on $1 million $100 loans.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, in theory, $100,000 loan, and what's the risk? What's the risk that house or those people might not be able to make the payments versus they know they're going to get what they're going to get with Trump. He's going to pay his bill. Otherwise, you're out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. He was trying to explain that the victims were the people at the low end trying to borrow money.
But they're all the victim of the bank, aren't they? Aren't we the victim of the bank?
It's odd to me, and I've heard other people talk about this, is that you get paid minuscule money for what you get in just a regular account. If your money's sitting in a bank, that's probably not a good place for it to be.
No, it's not a good investment.
Because you're not getting anything on it. And
it actually is better today than it was then because interest rates are not quite zero anymore. I mean,
Right.
they're something, you park $500,000 for 9 months or a year and you make, $1,500. I mean, that's nothing.
It's not.
It's a waste of time.
You kind of explain it, and I'm like going, or you could do like I do, like buy 12 cases of this box of stuff, and then you go sell that
Right.
over the course of 2 weekends, and you're like going, okay, what I got on my investment is the equivalent of having $10,000 in the bank.
Yes.
Do you see how you
Yes.
look at numbers, and that's what I want. How much did I make? How
Yeah.
much am I making?
Now, is that banker a career banker? How long have you been in the banking business? A while?
Yeah.
Same position he's always had? Is he a vice president? Is he a senior vice president?
No.
Oh, going the other way.
It's just status quo.
Okay, I got you. Doesn't own the bank.
No,
Okay. Just works for the bank.
just works for the bank.
Okay,
He's worked with a few banks
I got you.
during.
They all have. What happens is there's 10 community banks around here, and they recruit one banker from another bank, and he comes over and brings all of his customers over, and they, wow, look at all this new business. Well, then when that one leaves, when the other one leaves from there and goes to that bank, then he drags his people on. So it's just really just a shell and nut game. They're just moving the chairs around, and it seems like you've got new business, but you just have different customers.
Right.
I mean, that's the way I think it is.
And he did agree with me on this. I said, okay, so then the due diligence should have fallen on the bank and the insurance companies and whoever was involved in that, not the guy who said it. I mean, if the guy said it and then everybody bought it and he followed up on it and paid it, there is not a victim.
Well, you got to have an appraisal. Somebody's got to do the due diligence. Listen, they don't make $100 million loans in the afternoon. No, I mean, it'll take them 6 months or a year to do that deal.
I mean,
9
if I
people.
Feel pretty good about getting my money, I certainly wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And so they felt pretty good about, and they do it today.
Sure.
Well, maybe not today.
Well, if Trump's like any of the other developers, they are in a different situation. They put out a request for bids. Hey, I'm building a $100 million deal here. Who wants to give me the best deal?
Sure.
This is what we'll do. We'll give you this. We'll give you so many days, interest free. We'll discount your front end. We'll lock it in for this period of time. I mean, listen, they know that that's a premium lending opportunity. And if they want to sell it to somebody else in a secondary market or somebody else in the market, who knows? They can make a little bit of money.
I'm not saying this happened, but do you think a lot of times, like numbers like that, you're figuring in what I call the cushion of money that you're going to need to, if you're in a union state of getting whatever contractors there, making sure the work's done, or people that can hold up the permitting process. I mean, are wheels greased? I mean, I call it cushion money. I don't know.
I think they
it's
are.
Not a legit way I would explain running a business, but I think that's got to exist.
Well, there are always fees on the front end that the bank charges.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to charge some points. $100 million loan, a point is a percentage. So that's $1 million. So they get $1 million fee, prepaid interest, if you will, if that's the number.
Sure, you're right. You've already spent $1 million walking out the door. So.
Oh, you've spent way more than that before you get that. You got to do all the underwriting. You got to do all the plans. You got to do the infrastructure. None of that stuff's cheap. It costs money to do what they do. He's obviously successful because he builds projects that people want to come. They know where they go. He's going to build the development. He's going to develop the golf course. He's going to sell the lots, build the resort. I mean, it's a lot of moving pieces in that deal.
Yeah.
Is there risk? Absolutely. Do you charge according to the risk? Of course you do.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you get paid. You think my property's worth less than I think it's worth. Okay, well, we can argue over that. We can have somebody give us an opinion of what it is. I think it's worth $150 million. You think it's only worth $80 million. We get an appraisal. It comes in at 110. Neither one of us was right, but I didn't somehow, dupe you into doing this deal with me. You wanted to do the deal. You got your money and moved on, but because I thought the property was worth more, somehow now that makes me guilty of fraud when there's no victim.
Yeah.
Everybody got paid what they were supposed to pay, and you got some judge that walks in, person off the street. You got a prosecutor who says, I'm going to get Donald Trump. You have this case. There's no jury. It's in a liberal state with a federal judge.
Now you're getting political.
Handpicked, and he picks some number. Oh, it's guilty. He gets to decide. It's one man's opinion. There is no jury. So I don't know. It's a mess. And I think it goes both ways.
Sure.
But it always seems to go. It always seems that the liberals get away with it more than the conservatives.
Uh-oh. We'll have to talk more about that maybe next time.
Okay.
We got to take a breather. We'll come back with more real martial law
Yeah.
in just a second.
If you're buying or selling real estate and you need an attorney, contact Marshall Biddle at the Biddle Law Firm. Marshall's been involved in the purchase and sale of real estate for more than 30 years, and his family's been in the real estate development business for more than a century. In addition to being an attorney, Marshall is also a licensed real estate agent here in South Carolina. The Biddle Law Firm is located in historic downtown Conway and online at biddlelawfirm.net.
Howdy, partner. Welcome back to Real Martial Law.
We are back, and the stage is running a little behind schedule, so
Yeah,
we're
for
out
sure.
of time. How can people contact you, get more information, and put you to work?
They can email me at marshall@biddlelawfirm.net. You can ask questions about this show, questions at realmartiallaw.com. You can call us at the office, 843-903-1600, and, we'll figure it out. You got something you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. You got some questions, we'll treat you fair.
All righty, my friend. Good seeing you this week.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
Yep, real estate broker, attorney here along the Grand Strand. It's Real Martial Law. Marshall Biddle, thank you so much for letting me be part of your show this week.
Thank you, Jack.
Real Martial Law is a paid program. The views expressed on this show are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the ownership or management of this broadcast station.